Hello and welcome to the Denver Homes Market Report. This is Ricky.schoonover, the host of this show and your local realtor here at 8Z Real Estate. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is Denver's monthly real estate podcast. We are in our 6th season. This happens to be our 5th episode, so thank you very much for tuning in. Very shortly, you're going to see a subscribe button. I think it pops up right there on my YouTube channel or possibly right there. But anyways, if you're listening to the podcast on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. So last month, what did we talk about? Last month, first we talked about inspections, right? I had a real world situation where I was working with a seller at this point, and we got to inspections with the buyer that had come in and put an offer in to purchase his home, and we ran into some inspection issues that we just could not reconcile, and we ended up not selling the home. So I started to dig deeper with him and start talking to him a little bit better, and I knew a little bit about his backstory, but I really wanted him to realize that having your own buyer representation when you're purchasing a home is very important. And that goes for any home you're purchasing. You always want to have your own representation. And here's a good example why. He was a renter and he had been renting the home for several years. And the owner of the property came to him and said, hey, I'm getting ready to sell the house. You got 30 days, you got to move out. And we're going to go to market in a couple weeks here, and after you move out. And so he's like, well, how much are you going to sell it for? I'd like to buy it. I don't really want to move. I got a lot of stuff here. And the guy's like, all right, well, that might make it easier. And he said, well, I'm already working with this realtor. I've already been working with him for 4 to 6 weeks now, kind of getting all the paperwork in order, kind of getting the timing together, looking at the market statistics to figure out where we're going to come in for the list price. And he goes, yeah, what do you think about selling it for? And he gave him the price, and then he went ahead and purchased the property, and he did not take the time to reach out and get his own representation. It just seemed easy, right? He already had a realtor there. He was already working with a seller. Now, here's the thing. The seller didn't save any money because they'd already signed their listing agreement. So the commissions were already agreed upon before they even spoke to the tenant. So the seller didn't save anything. And the buyer certainly got underserved because he didn't have anyone representing him in the sale. So they just kind of did a transaction brokerage. And in a transaction brokerage, brokers on both sides of the transaction, they are not your advocate. Even if you started out as a seller and they were your advocate and you signed paperwork, once you bring in another buyer and the buyer and the seller are now going to work with that same realtor, that realtor has to change the agency. So they have to change the agency with the seller and say, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, I'm no longer working for you. I'm no longer your advocate. Now I am a transaction broker. Here, please sign this piece of paper. Well, the sellers don't always understand what that really means. And then they go to the buyer and say, I'm not really your representative. I'm not the sellers either. So here's a piece of paper. I need for you to sign this. I'm a transaction broker. And then they go through the transaction. And that buyer never bothered. It just seemed easy, right? He already lived there for several years. He already kind of knew the house. So he just bought it, didn't do home inspections or anything else. Okay, fast forward 6 years later, he calls me up and says, hey, Ricky, I have this house and I bought it, several years ago. I used to rent it and I'm looking to sell it now. And I was like, okay, great. So, it was in a little bit of, deferred maintenance. It needed some painting and clear out the yard of some trash and things like that. So we did all those sort of things. We painted the interior, got it staged, and we went to market. Then we finally got an offer on it. Buyer comes in with professional representation. They're being guided by their realtor, and they're saying, hey, we're going to check the sewer line. We're going to check for radon. We're going to check for the general home inspection. So they have a time frame in their contract to do that. So they did that within their time frames, and they came back and they're like, okay, well, the radon's kind of high. So that's been high since he's been living in there. He's been living in there for 13 years now. And the radon came in almost double of what the legal limit is. The roof age was unknown, and in the inspector's opinion, needed to be replaced. It was at least 13 years old because he had lived there for several years as a renter, and then 6 more as an owner. So the roof really needed to be replaced, or if not, at least extensive repairs. And then the foundation, this was the big one. There were tree roots, and the tree roots had grown into the foundation, like hit against the foundation and kind of pushed the foundation, even cracked it in a couple places. And so all this, and the sewer line as well, had tree roots growing through the sewer line. So all this could have been sort of, mitigated when he purchased the property if he would have been properly represented. I don't think I've ever had a situation where I've had a buyer purchase a property and not at least advise them to do a home inspection. I can guarantee you, I've always advised them to do a home inspection. And I think there was one instance where they bought a new build and it was a condo, a smaller condo, and the guy was paying cash for it. And he's like, I don't really need to do an inspection. I just want to close this thing up in this week. So we didn't do an inspection for that particular property. That was like 25 years ago. every other property since that I've sold with clients has been with a home inspection. So anyway, the tree root that was grown into the foundation, that probably would have been caught 6 years ago, and at least that could have been mitigated and fixed at that point, or at least brought up to the seller at that point that was selling him the property, the landlord. And the roof, same thing. It was already old. It probably could have been addressed and got some repairs done at that time, so it wasn't in disrepair when he went to sell the home. But bottom line, if you're buying a home, first of all, you need your own realtor, you need your own representation. And second of all, you have to do an inspection. You do your due diligence, because once that inspection period is over, once you've had all your inspections, you've gone back and forth with the seller, and you've agreed to what repairs are going to be done before the close of contract, or at least as a result of the sale, that's it. At that point, you're buying that home as is, where is, with all its faults. It's right there in our contract that we kind of gloss over sometimes. We got to be really careful about that. Once we're past that inspection period, that's it. It is now your home at that point and your responsibility. So that's why it's so important to first have your own realtor, have your own representation, and do home inspections. Even if it's a familiar home, even if you're buying it from a family friend or a family member or a coworker or whatever it is, no matter what, even if you feel like you know the home, maybe it's a family home that you've gone to over the years many, many times. You're like, oh yeah, I know this, my uncle, Joe's house. I've been there, to every holiday for the last 12 years, blah, blah, blah. Still get a home inspection, because just because you go there for holidays doesn't mean you know that there's tree roots growing into your foundation, or how old the roof is, or when the last hail damage came through, or whatever it is. So get your own realtor, get your home inspections. Talk to your realtor for your area, and let them guide you on what inspections they would at least minimally recommend to you. All right, then what else did we get into last month? We got into this age-old thing, right, Ricky? Ricky, I'm saving money. I'm a potential buyer. I'm saving money because I want to have enough money for my down payment, my closing costs. So here you are squirreling away these little nuts or acorns every month, and you're trying to get your money together. And while you're doing that, GDP is going up, usually 2.5%, right? That's kind of their goal. So that's going up 2.5% every year. And then the real estate market itself, just the price of homes, that's going up as well. So, you start saving 5 years, and then fast forward 5 more years into the future, and you think you're ready to buy the home, and you start getting into the market, you hire your realtor, and you realize that, you're probably ready. You can buy it at that point. You've saved some money. But if you would have bought the home 5 years prior, even though you didn't have quite as much money in savings, maybe you just had enough for a minimum down payment, and you wanted to save up for a bigger down payment to lower your payment, you might have been better off just using like a 5% down conventional loan, or an FHA loan, which is only 3.5% down, buying the home, and then riding that equity train, right? Staying in that home and start building that equity. GDP is still going up, the price of the homes are going up, and 5 years later, now you probably have more equity that you could sell that home and go buy another home. Or maybe you get a home equity line of credit out on that initial home, put a renter in that home, and then go buy another home, and now you own 2 homes. So there's different ways to do your financial planning on that. It's very important that you consult a realtor, consult a lender, and then find out the best path for you. But just know that it's only about 10% of people that really tell me that they're going to save for their down payment and their closing costs actually come out ahead five years later. So you might just be better to get your foot in the door, buy that house, even if you're not putting down that 20% or that 10%, you're only able to put down 5% or 3.5%. It might be the better route to go. But again, you have to make those decisions on your own. But that's just kind of a situation that also came up very recently, where I had buyers that wanted to buy a property and just kind of realized they didn't have enough money for down payment. They could still get the property. They could get their foot in the door, but they wanted to have more money for down payment and closing costs. And it probably may or may not work out in their favor. But I just wanted to bring that up. And then what else are we going to talk about today? Let's see here, saving to buy. And then, are we there yet with a buyer's market? We have been teasing this all year long, talking about, are we in a buyer's market? Well, we're getting very close. And we're actually probably there at this point. I think that sellers have now realized that they're going to have to negotiate with buyers. Buyers are going to ask for repairs, and you're going to have to get this home, in pretty good shape before they buy it, because they have a lot of options. There's a lot of homes out there for them to look at in these different price points. So I was doing a search for a potential client today, and I put in 550 to 700,000, drew a map around it, which is like about a 4 or 5 mile radius map. And between 550 and 700 was the price point. And there were something like 200 homes. And so, just a lot of inventory out there, a lot of choices. So buyers can now be picky. So I'm thinking we're in a bit of a buyer's market, and it might be time for buyers to jump in if you've been thinking about it. And you might be thinking, well, I want to wait till the Fed's lower. They keep teasing that they're going to lower the Fed rates, and they may lower the rates. They're probably going to lower them in September. But here's the deal. You get in now while sellers have it in their minds that, okay, I'm going to have to work with these buyers because my house has been on the market for, 45 days, 60 days, 90 days. I've seen some in there for 220 days. So they've been in the market for a while. They're ready to deal. Case in point, we had a property here in my neighborhood over here on Elati Street. And originally, like about a year and a half ago, they remodeled it. They built a garage. Above the garage, they put a little ADU, like a little auxiliary dwelling unit up there, like an artist loft above the garage. And then they remodeled the whole home. It was very beautiful. And they had it listed for somewhere around 1.2 million. I think 1,199,000, somewhere right in there, close to 1.2 million. And it sat in the market, had a couple price reductions. I think they got it down to about 1.1 million. They finally took it off the market. And then they came back on the market in the spring and thinking they were going to sell it. And they put it in again for like, I think 1.1 or 1.150, I think. And then they had some price reductions. Then they did a big price reduction. I think they went down to 1.1 million or 1,025,000, somewhere in that range. And then we just saw that it closed, and it closed for below $1 million. So it started out at 1.2 about a year and a half ago, 4 months ago, all the way till fast forward. The buyers that just purchased it got it for $970,000. A couple of lessons in that. One is price the property properly from the beginning. Because if you price it high and think, well, I just price it high because I can always, take less, but I can never ask for more. Okay, well, that ends up biting you because what happens is as the market kind of continues down, you start chasing the market down and you start losing that buyer confidence that what's wrong with the house? Why is no one buying it? And they keep dropping the price. So there must be something wrong with that house, right? And then end up not selling the home, or you sell it for much less because someone came in and put a lowball offer in, but they probably offered them $900,000 and they finally agreed on a price of $970,000. Pricing your property correctly from the very beginning is super, super smart. That's just the name of the game. You try to go too high. If you go lower, a lot of times that can work out in your favor. You go lower and then you get multiple offers in and then your price gets drawn up, or you're pricing it a little low and you find out that is actually where the market's at. You thought it was worth more, but really the only value that matters, we've talked about this a bunch of times, the only value that matters is the value that a buyer comes in and is willing to pay for that property. That's the value of the property, regardless of what an appraiser says. An appraisal is, it's good to protect the banks on the appraiser, and the appraiser can come in and make sure that the house is, in a reasonable price range. But there's a reason why when appraisers come in and do the property appraisals, they pretty much look at what the offer was and then they justify that offer. I mean, there's probably appraisers out there going to be like, no, we don't do that. But let's be honest, there's very rare that they come in and do an appraisal and they're like, oh, we're going to appraise this for $200,000 over your asking price. They don't want to get themselves in trouble. So they're going to look at what you're asking for the property, what the buyer and seller have agreed to on the property, and then justify that number if they can. I mean, obviously, if they can't, they can't. But that's kind of how that goes. When we're working with a buyer, we only care about at or above value. If it came in at value or above, that's great. They can get their loan. We move forward. All right. So are we in a buyer's market? We're very close. I would say we are in a buyer's market now. I think about 3 months ago, I did my podcast and I was like, we're not quite there yet. I would say at this point we are. We're very confident that the feds are going to cut the rates. They're probably going to cut at least a little cut in September. And so you might be thinking, well, I'm just going to wait for the rates to drop and wait for the rates to drop. Well, here's the thing. You can get in now while the sellers have it in their mindset that we are in a buyer's market, right? That we are there. Or you can wait till September when when the interest rates come down. They're only going to come down about 25 basis points or 50 basis points. So right now we're probably at 6.75 to 7%. That they'll probably drop down into the 6.25 to 6.5% is my guess. So it's not going to be a huge reduction, maybe a quarter point, half a point. I know that's important, but also what's going to happen even when the Feds start talking about lowering the rates, buyers are going to start coming in. There's already buyers out there that want to buy. They're already waiting. They've been waiting for a year and a half, 2 years for the rates to drop. We're finally going to get a rate drop. So there's a lot of buyers out there on the sidelines that are going to jump in. And then before you know it, We're going to get into October. It'll be the winter market, so maybe not quite as crazy, but we're going to go right back into a seller's market. We have not that much, even though we have inventory right now, that inventory is going to start drying up. Buyers are going to start coming out of the woodwork, and very quickly by next spring, we'll very likely, as long as the economy keeps going the way it's going, next spring we're going to be back into a situation where we are in competitive bidding, prices are going up, and buyers are jumping in at that point, and they're going to be almost too late. So you might be better off jumping in now. Yes, the rates might come down a little bit. If the rates do come down in the next year or two, you can always do a 2-1 buy down. So you do a 2-1 buy down, you put in a certain amount of money into an account that the bank holds on to, and then next year or 2 years later, when the rates do come down, if they do, then you refinance. You use that money that you had given them, and any of that money that you didn't use up on your savings on your 2-1 buy down, that money is still yours. You can use it into your refi or put it as principal down on your property when you do your refi. So those are just some trains of thoughts that I have for you today. I do have a couple announcements. I have a potential client appreciation event. So this is for my clients and potential clients. So that is coming up on August 14th. It's going to be at 5 to 7 o'clock. You do have to RSVP. So RSVP me at 720-688-5110. Just text me and say, hey Ricky, this is whoever your name is, and I listened to your podcast and you were talking about your event coming up. It's at an art gallery. I won't give you the name of the art gallery because I want to make sure I get an RSVP for it. But it's right here in the Golden Triangle here in Denver, and it's going to go on from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. on August 14th. So it's an art event. It's landscape artists. There's 5 different artists that are going to be in this show. So we'll be there. We'll have some wine and some non-alcoholic beverages and some small bites for snacking. And we have a curated tour where they're going to walk us through all the artwork. So it's going to be really exciting, really a fun event. Learn about artwork, learn about collecting. There's no obligation to collect any artwork. Of course, if you find something you really love and you want to collect it, great. But that's not the goal here from my perspective. My perspective is for you to go there, learn a little bit about art, learn a little about collecting, learn about these artists, and just enjoy each other and have a good time. And so that event will be going on, like I said, August 14th at 5 o'clock to 7 p.m. right here in Golden Triangle here in Denver. If you would like to attend, just shoot me a text. Let me know, hey, Ricky, I heard you on the podcast talking about your art event. Sounds interesting. Want to check it out. Just shoot me a text at 720-688-5110. And as you guys know, the podcast comes out on the first Thursday of every month. So tomorrow will be the first Friday, and it's August 1st Friday. So you guys all know that I volunteer on the board for the Arts District on Santa Fe, and there's one time a year that we get approval from the city. We got to pay for it, of course, but we get approval from the city. We close down Santa Fe Drive, so there's no traffic going up and down Santa Fe Drive. We put vendors back out on the street, so they're back out there with their tables and everything and all their displays. Selling their local wares. And so it's a really good time. Everyone comes out. It's a big party. I think they got 10,000 people that come for this event annually each year. So that's coming up on First Friday, which will be tomorrow, August 1st Friday. That's the one that we get to close down Santa Fe. All the other First Fridays, well, not all of them, but all the other summer First Fridays, we close down the side streets, like some of those side roads for the vendors, so because they're not allowed to be on Santa Fe at that time. But this is the one event where we do close down Santa Fe. So come on out. Down here, basically, if you don't know where the Arts District is, if you're coming in off of 6th Avenue, find parking. There's going to be parking, be a challenge. You can always go to West High School over there and park there, and then walk. It's not that far of a walk from there. But we're basically at 8th and Santa Fe. That's sort of the hub of it. You can always check in at the headquarters. Our ADSF headquarters is over there at 858 Santa Fe Drive. All right. Well, that's going to wrap up today's show. Like I said, we are now, I'm going to call it, we are now in a buyer's market. And I think when the rates come down, if they cut rates in September, that's going to shift. And so don't wait too long. Don't try to time the market. If you're ready to purchase a home, now is probably, as a buyer out there, is probably the time. All right. If you have any questions coming up, or maybe you're thinking about selling your home, or you're thinking about buying a home, give me a call. Once again, 720-688-5110. Thank you very much for tuning in to Denver's monthly real estate podcast. This is the Denver Homes Market Report. And once again, this is Ricky Schoonover with 8Z Real Estate.